Tonight, Superman has a chat with a literal flaming skull demon about who the real monster is. The Blackhawks wrap up their series with a nuclear-sized bang, and while Jonah Hex is getting his face pounded in, Amadeus Arkham is getting high and banging broads. All that and more this week on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 34 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and hoo boy, do we have a stacked week this week. Not so much in the number of books because there's only 13 of them. Thank you, DC, for finally evening that out, by the way. No, there are just a number of books that are notable for one reason or another that are all coming out on this week. So, this week we have the number 8 issues of Justice League Dark and I, Vampire, which make up the respective third and fourth parts of the Rise of the Vampires crossover story, wrapping up this week. Additionally, we have Teen Titans number 8, which is the third prelude to the Culling crossover story. And we have Blackhawks number 8, which is the final issue of that series. As well as those, we have Batman, The Dark Knight, Superman, Green Lantern, New Guardians, Aquaman, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, and Voodoo. All of which number 8, none of which particularly special, but hey, they're there, and I guess that's all I can really ask of them. Before I get into the comics, though, personal note, not really anything that happened in history, but I just this week signed up for DC Universe Infinite, which is the comic reading service from DC, $8 a month. You can read literally all of the comics that I have been or will be talking about on this show. And I gotta tell you, I have been lugging around all the trades for the week just in case I have time to read them at any particular point. Having it all on my phone, so much better. And I would highly suggest, if you are following along, all 2 of you, that you go ahead and invest in that, because it is well worth it. This is not a paid promotional spot, but I damn well wish it was. So let's go ahead and move on to this week's comics, starting with the Rise of the Vampires, Part 3 and 4, with Justice League Dark. Justice League Dark number 8, written by Peter Milligan, art by Daniel Sampere. This is part 3 of the Rise of the Vampires crossover series, and last issue we left off in I, Vampire with Mary joining the side of good, Xanadu going to talk to the big crystal Buddhist thing, and Constantine and Deadman going to get Andrew Bennett from the land of the dead. I think that basically sums it all up. So this issue picks up with Boston and Constantine going to see Andrew in Purgatory. And he's just sitting there chilling, minding his own business. And they're like, hey, buddy, we need you to come back because it's really bad out there and the world's going to end. And he's like, I'm sorry, but I have no more fight left in me. Also, a lot of what is happening up there is kind of my fault, so maybe this is like my punishment. And they're like, cool, but that's dumb, so you need to come with us. And he's like, sorry, no. So Andrew's off the table already. Then we cut back to Xanadu, who's talking to the big crystal Buddhist thing. And apparently he's in charge of how magic power is like split or something. And she's basically saying, hey, Kane is currently drawing on all the magic power. I need you to take it away from him and put it into someone more worthy. And the Buddhist thing is like, are you sure? People are going to really hate that. And she's like, yeah, let him deal with it. So they say something about the winds of change or whatever, and it doesn't result in anything immediately. But Kane can feel that the magic is kind of being pulled from him, so he is very, very upset about that. Then we cut back to the rooftop where pretty much all the action is happening. And Tig and John from I, Vampire are arguing about like how much they hate this. And then for some reason Shade starts going through like a little bit of a mental breakdown because he's just really upset about all this stuff going on and he can't control his M-Vest anymore. And so we get the backstory of Shade, like, right here. Like, Zatanna's like, hey, what's happening with Shade? What's his deal, Xanadu? And Xanadu's like, well, let me tell you. And basically, it's just that he tried to kill... Sorry, he accidentally killed his girlfriend at the time with his M-Vest, and he feels a lot of guilt about it. And as such, he's kind of a little bit crazy. So that's the gist of it. But regardless, at this point in the fight, he basically is like, I can't keep doing this. I'm just gonna let go now. Goodbye, everybody. And he teleports out to what he calls the area of madness. And it's just this creepy, weird-looking psychobabble zone. And in there, he meets up with his old girlfriend, and she's like, "Hey, honey, I'm real. I'm real in here. Are you going to go back to your team?" And he's like, "You know what? I don't think so. I think I'm here for good." And they walk off into the equivalent of the sunset, and then Xanadu's back on Earth being like, "Goodbye, Shade." So I genuinely think this is the end of Shade in this book, which is very strange. Like, they just did this, and it's like, all right, in the middle of an event, he's just walking off into the sunset. Anyway, back to the actual vampire stuff. Zatanna's like, all right, screw this, let's go fight Kane, because I'm not going down without a fight. And Mary's like, oh yeah, no, your magic is failing, her magic is already pretty much gone, and you pretty much are just saying you want me to go fight him. And she's like, well, fine, whatever. So they all hitch a ride, go out to fight Kane. He literally just immediately blasts them away, like, no problem. And Zatanna teleports out to some park on the outskirts of town, to which Kane and all of his vampires immediately make their way over to, like, without waiting at all. As they're out at this park, Constantine opens back up the portal from Purgatory, and he pops out, and he's like, hey, no good, we couldn't get him back, so this is kind of our last stand. And as such, all the vampires arrive on them. We get a little glimpse that Tig and John are like, wow, all the vampires just left all at once. I wonder where they're going. And then we see in the park, finally, that Winds of Change thing happens, and some magic is being all poured into one spot. For some reason, we focus on Batman for all of, like, one panel. And then we see that the winds are all forming, and a dust is making Andrew Bennett. He has come back to life. And he's here to fight Kane. So, yeah. That's part 3. It's good. It's fine. Why did we do that Shade detour? That felt, like, really out of nowhere. Especially because, like, I want to see if I can find the exact word she uses here. My God, what's happening to him? And then Xanadu says some stuff. And then Zatanna's like, you mean Kathy? What's the story there? And then we get into the story there. And it's like, do we really need to do this right now? Guys, there are vampires all around. Regardless. Yeah, no, it just kind of felt like the only thing that needed to happen this issue was Xanadu needed to do her thing with the Crystal Buddhist guy. And Constantine and Boston needed to find out that Andrew didn't want to come back. And then at the end, Andrew had to come back. So really, all of the plot of this book was more or less resolved in about 4 pages of content, because the Boston stuff and Boston, Brand, and Constantine all happens in 3 pages, and then Xanadu stuff happens in 1. So, like, the rest of this kind of just felt like filler for the sake of, oh, well, it's a crossover issue, so it technically has to fall into the story. But, yeah, the rest of it didn't really feel that necessary. As such, though, it is still a very good story it's being told. I like where we're leaving off in terms of what's coming up next issue. It just happens to be that this particular issue doesn't feel as strong. Also, maybe this is personally how I feel about Andrea Sorrentino's art, but seeing Andrew drawn in anything but that moody, dark style really just takes all the fun out of him. Like, seeing him there in Purgatory, also, he's human, I suppose, which is half of it, but he's just... I don't know. He loses his coolness for me. So overall, though, I am going to give this a 7.5. I do think it's still good. I do think it's still very good. But it is definitely the more of the, okay, this is just keeping pace until we can get to the finale next issue. So, whatever. That's fine. But it's still hanging in there, and part 4 is, of course, in the issue number 8 of iVampire. iVampire number 8, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov and art by Andrea Sorrentino. This is part 4, aka the finale of the Rise of the Vampires crossover. And last issue, Justice League Dark number 8, had Andrew coming back from the dead. That was pretty much all that really needed to happen. Andrew came back from the dead in a weird, magic-y way. And that's where we pick up, of him just showing up in front of Kane, and he's like, hey, I'm back. And Kane's like, all right, fine, let's fight. Let's do this. You against my army. And immediately, Andrew just raises his arms, and he's like, I'm going to turn your entire army to dust. And he just does so. All of the vampires just crumble into dust, and everyone's looking on like, you can do that? Since when have you had that power? What's going on here? And specifically Constantine and Xander were like, we'll see what happens. Hopefully he's still good enough to take on Kane. And so Kane tries to go on mano-a-mano against Andrew, but just absolutely no fight for him at all. He just blasts him away. And Kane's like, what happened to you when you were dead, man? And Andrew tells him that he's been made into Kane's equal and opposite. So whereas Kane was trying to destroy the world, Andrew is going to build a new one. And Kane's like, you kill your own kind, you're a traitor. He's like, yeah, you know what, I was. But here's the thing, I thought of something new. See, I've been playing by the rule book that has been presented to me in life, but now I'm thinking I have enough power that I can just make a new rule book. So he takes all the dust of all the vampires that he just made and creates them again. He remakes an army of vampires, but now working for him. And he's like, see, I was a traitor, but now I guess you could call me a patriot. And every single person who's there watching, Justice League Dark and Tig and John, they're all like, oh no, oh no, oh no. Except for Mary, who's like, oh yes, this is all I've ever wanted. So Mary goes up to Andrew, and he immediately starts apologizing. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry for everything that I've done. I've seen the error of my ways. Let's make out. And they start going at it. Like, they go at it hard. And then they turn on Kane. They just straight up start attacking him and tearing him limb from limb. And he's just like, oh, I'm a primordial evil. You cannot defeat me. And he's like, maybe not. But you know what? It's going to be fun to try. And he's an angel now. Andrew has 6 wings, all of them bat wings, mind you, but 6 wings and a giant sword, and he comes down and just slashes the head off of Kane. And immediately Xanadu starts explaining, yeah, so in the last issue when I made that deal with the Crystal Buddhist thing to move the magic from Kane into someone else, it went over to Andrew, because I thought he would be good enough to not raise his own army of vampires. Oh, we've just traded a big bad for a bigger bad. And John, he's like, I know Andrew. He's up to something. There's no way he's just going back to Mary. And Tig's like, yeah, well, he's trying to eat her alive through her mouth. So as soon as Mary turns and says, all right, kill all the humans, let's go ahead with the original plan, Andrew shuts her down, tells her, nope, our secret's been let out. That's enough for one day. We're going to build from the shadows, and we're going to do that. In fact, you know what? I think I have enough power. Let me see if I can do this. And he just wishes all of their memories of all the people who were attacked today away. Nobody remembers anything about the vampires, except for the Justice League Dark and his 2 comrades, obviously. And Tig specifically says, like, how come I remember everything? And she's like, well, it was all your fault, so maybe you should remember. So Andrew gets the army together with Mary and says, all right, we're going to go build an empire of vampires, but we're doing it my way this time. And John steps up like, you can't be serious. And he's like, hey, I need you to do something for me, John. Wink, wink. And John's like, oh, come on, man. Don't make me do that. We'll get to it. So all the vampires start leaving. The Justice League Dark gets in Andrew's way, and they're like, hey, you are now leader of a vampire horde. We will stop you. You understand that, right? And he's like, here's the thing. you guys just got out of a really tough fight, and I don't think you're in any situation to fight me and all the same people again, especially considering I'm even more powerful than Kane was. So I promise that I'm going to be different. We'll see how that goes, but how about for now you get out of my way? And Constantine promises that if he ever does step out of line, crosses the line, that there will be a sun with his name on it. So we cut over to Tig and John, and they're like, okay, so Andrew's evil? And John's like, no, he's planning something, but I'm not sure what it is. But for right now, Andrew wants me to go talk to the Van Helsings, the vampire hunters. And they are even worse than the vampires. Like, they're just awful people. So let's go do that. And then, of course, Tig ends on the final page here of, well, at least we killed Kane, and he's definitely not going to come back, right? As we see what I believe is the body of Kane reforming behind them. So yeah, that's still on the table. So Andrew is God. He is able to do whatever the hell he wants now. He has turned back to lead the vampire army. I'm loving this turn in character. Like, honest to God, I know this was more of an iVampire event than it was a Justice League Dark event. They were just kind of there for it, but this feels like a great turning point in the story of iVampire so far. Like, the entire first arc was him saying, okay, I'm not going to be a vampire. I'm not going to do that thing. But now, going into this, what I guess you would consider the second arc, he's like, no, I am a vampire, and I'm going to do it better than anyone has ever done it before. And that's super interesting to me. I'm very much down for that. So overall, I give this issue an 8. My only major critique is that the big bad by the end of it was just kind of like, whatever. He's gone. They just had his own army attack him and tear him apart. He didn't really seem like that big of a threat, all things considered. In fact, I don't even know what he really did over the course of this event. He hucked some vampires at some innocent people, but he himself didn't really do much of anything. So that's my only real critique with this event as a whole, and this issue specifically. But the art, fantastic. I love the way it's turning Andrew now. Solid all around. So 8 for this, and I look forward to what comes up in iVampire number 9. I will say that this issue did direct me to say that something's going to happen in Justice League Dark number 9 that relates to this. So we'll see what happens when we get there as well. Teen Titans number 8, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Guara. This is a prelude to The Culling, along with the number 8 issues of Superboy and Legion Lost. It's something. Last issue, if you go directly before this, was the Teen Titans falling into a hole in nowhere and Harvest capturing them. And I guess this picks up pretty much directly from there. We have Red Robin is being quote-unquote tortured by a woman named Omen, who later on we'll find out is also named Lilith, but we'll get to that. And basically he's just mentally, she's like a telepath or something, and she's able to tap into this person's mind and find out all their secrets. So one thing I just want to point out, just even on this first page, is that they say all the things that Red Robin has done, and one of them is, you've stared into the hypnotic eye of Two-Face. I don't think Two-Face is hypnotic. I think he just has two faces, but they keep rolling as if he has mind control, and I'm really already confused on page 1. So anyway, we see Omen got him in like this weird ball of water or something like that, and is able to just reach into his mind, and basically in this realm, in this room of hers that she calls her womb, she is able to warp reality and make them see or believe or maybe actually true of whatever they want. But she is able to delve into their mind and get their secrets. So Wonder Girl and Bunker are trying to bust in to save Red Robin, but it's not working out. And Cassie's getting more and more annoyed at Bunker as he's trying to calm her down. We see that Solstice has been in this room before. She's already been through whatever's coming up, so she's upset over the fact of the things she's done in the past. But Cassie's just like, cool, you've been here? How do we deal with her? And Solstice says you don't. She can like warp reality. It's just, you gotta die to pretty much avoid her. So Omen lets Red Robin out because apparently She's got everything she needs, and then teleports him, sends him, I don't know how you want to call it, to a holding room, which again we'll get to later. So then Omen reaches out into the group for Cassie, drags her in, and we see that Cassie's big secret is that she doesn't have any powers per se, but she has invisible armor that gives her her abilities. As well, her lariat is draining her own life force, and it may one day control her. Okay. So then we get Red Robin. He's being tied down in basically what seems to be like a Saw-style operating room. And Harvest shows up and says, like, you know, Timmy, we're a lot alike, you and me. We both want what's best for these meta-powered teenagers. We just have different ways of going about it. Work with me, and together we will rule the galaxy as father and son. And he's like, no, not going to do that. And they're like, all right, well, you're going to be part of my games. So he puts on some weird armor or something like that as we cut back to Omen, who is now... She's now delving into the mind of Skitter, she then separates the bug part of Skitter from Selene, to which Selene says, quote, render us together again or life on Earth itself is doomed. So I guess there's some big thing going on with Skitter where the fate of the world depends on her being Skitter. Okay. So anyway, Bunker and Solstice are talking for a second, and Bunker's just starting to really get down in the dumps because, you know, things aren't going so hot, all things considered. And Solstice tries to cheer him up, being like, no, you gotta believe. And he's like, did you double cross us? Because you've been here before. Did you know about this whole time? And Solstice says, like, yeah, look, I had to do some things that I absolutely hated for Harvest, and even when I was free, quote unquote, I was never actually free of him. Please forgive me. And Bunker goes, yeah, sure. So then we get a part in here in New York City that I genuinely have no idea why this is here, where a guy named Lance is talking to Amanda Waller of the Suicide Squad, and they see that big boat that was cut in half like 3 issues ago. And they're both looking at it and being like, hey, Amanda, don't get any ideas about these superpowered kids. And she's like, I was on Team 7. This is a thing that we're going to keep bringing up is Team 7. Remember that, readers. And then we just leave the scene. So we see now Cassie's all tied up along with Skitter inside the room. And she sees Red Robin is out of his restraints and is like, hey, I need you to stay out of my way. I'm not going to free you because I need to go and find out stuff for my own. So, yeah, stay here. And then Cassie gets upset because she's left behind. And then we see Omen trying to deal with Kid Flash. But Kid Flash, once she takes off his, like, costume or whatever that's keeping him bound, she literally can't control the Speed Force energy. I'm assuming it's Speed Force energy. I don't think we ever actually say that it's Speed Force. Regardless, she gets zapped with a lightning bolt, and then Kid Flash manages to grab Solstice and Bunker and starts running out of the room. And then the Vanguard, which are, I guess, the personal guards of Harvest, start shooting at them. They shoot Bunker through the chest and Solstice through the head. And then Kid Flash is like, no, what have I done? But then we see that it was all just a dream. And he wakes up and he's being untied by Cassie in the operating room. And then we see Red Robin is swimming to get to Omen before Bunker can be tortured or whatever. He slashes at the throat of Omen, and then he wakes up. And it turns out literally all of that was a dream. The Bart thing of him even being untied, Cassie seeing her, all that, everything after they leave Omen's room is a dream. And they've always just been tied down to these tables with no hope of escape. So then Harvest is like, good, rest now, my children, my new Ravagers. There's a guy named Leash there, and Leash takes them to wherever he needs to go. And then the book ends on Hale Harvest from Omen. I don't like... Here's the thing. Okay, this is a prelude, but, like, what are we even leading to at this point, you know? Like, what's going on? I don't... Like, I understand this is all setting up to be, like, some sort of big games or something like that, but this is the third prelude we have, and I still don't understand what in the hell this is the prelude to. Like, why did we have to have that? And they keep on saying that Omen does this stuff for Harvest because Harvest wants to pit friends against each other. And, like, I kind of get that here, but at the same time, it's not like anyone's revealing some deep, dark secrets of, like, Solstice was the only one who had a actual, like, could damage the team level of secret. And she just shared that to Bunker of her own accord. Like, that wasn't even a thing she had to be tortured for. I don't understand this. Overall, I give it a 4.5. And it's mainly just, like, I don't know if they know what they want to do with this book yet. It's a mess in general, and I'm just... Hopefully, part 1 is next issue. It is the Teen Titans Annual #1. Hopefully, once we get out of the preludes and start getting into the part 1, part 2 kind of structure, it'll be a little bit more easy to follow, but I doubt it, man, because I've just been struggling with this book in general. So 4.5, and dear Lord, help me. Batman The Dark Knight #8, written by Joe Harris, art by Ed Benes. We left off last issue with pretty much the end of the arc, end of the first arc, though we saw that the White Rabbit girl is actually the woman who Bruce Wayne is romantically interested in, Jai, that was it. That has nothing to do with this issue. Even on the cover, where there is White Rabbit, she's not here, so this is just pretty much standalone. So it opens up with Batman being called to a crime scene by Jim Gordon, and they're like, yeah, usually we chalk this stuff up to, you know, the rogues gallery, like the ones we all have, but yeah, no, not this one. And as Batman walks inside, he sees all these victims of what seems to be brutal violence of they're all basically been killed, and Batman uses the evidence to come to the conclusion of they did this to each other. Like, these people were brutally killed by each other. So yeah, he's like, all right, I'm going to go do some research. And he heads back to the Batcave. And Alfred's like, sir, are you so sure that there is, like, an actual mystery here? And he's like, I have to believe that Gotham isn't literally tearing itself apart, Alfred. People are better than that. And it's like, yeah, probably, Bruce. I have to imagine that. So he goes back out because I don't even know what he was even looking at here. I think it's something about the tunnels. Like, the underground isn't safe. But anyway, we cut over to Jim Gordon, who's being taunted by Lieutenant Forbes of Internal Affairs. And he's just like, you know, Jim, I got it in for you. And he basically, long and short of it, says, I'm forcing you to go see a shrink. You have to have your emotional stability evaluated. And if you fail, then you're off as a commissioner. So, yeah, that's the gist of it. And for some reason, Jim is really, really pissed about this. Cut back to Batman. He's going down in the tunnels, and he discovers a crack in the wall of an old, like, service wall or something like that. And he peeks inside to see if he can find something. There's a rumbling overhead, and he's like, oh, it must just be a train. But it turns out, as Alfred says, there aren't any trains running by them right now. So it's actually Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Just two big people who are both pretty stupid. Their names are, I know it's in here somewhere. Dumpson and Deaver Tweed. Great names. So they start fighting Batman because Batman, I guess, is snuck up on him or whatever. And they get a few good hits in, but as soon as they get Batman reeling backwards from a hit, they just run. They're just like, all right, we're out, bye. So Batman gives chase. He heads down some subway sewers, and he figures, okay, these guys are too stupid to, like, do anything. Like, they definitely didn't kill the people in the subway, and they're too stupid to make them do that, but they are definitely involved somehow. And as he gets to them at the end of the tunnel, explosion goes off, and they manage to get away. Cut to a senator is making his announcement for a presidential bid. He's on TV, he's in Gotham, and as he's making his announcement, he just pulls out a gun and shoots himself in the head. I have to imagine that's related to this violence. Regardless, we cut over to Gordon, who's in his therapist's office. And he's just like, look, everything you say here is confidential. You don't got to worry about it. And he's like, well, how much do I have to tell you to get the guy off my back, huh? Do I have to tell you about my daughter who is in a wheelchair? Do I have to tell you about my wife who in my daughter's book is now back? Do I have to tell you about my son who in my daughter's book is also doing things? By the way, read Batgirl. And then he basically says, do you take the subway to work, ma'am? And she's like, yeah, sometimes. And he's like, you shouldn't do that. This doesn't come back. I don't know why we did this. Regardless, Batman's trying to logic through, and he's trying to figure out what's going on with the Tweedles until finally he gets some analysis for a transmission that his cow picked up while he was down there, and the signal traces back to on top of a rooftop in Gotham. So he goes up there, and wouldn't you know it, Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter is mind controlling people. Kind of his whole shtick, and as soon as you saw Tweedledee and Tweedledum, you'd think you would have figured that out, but turns out no. So he kicks Mad Hatter's face in, and then he goes to fight the Tweedles, but they turn on the mind control thing, which Bruce struggles to fight against. And then Mad Hatter just goes on this whole thing of I didn't do anything to these people. I simply let them be who they truly are. These people are animals, blah, 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 and they'll kill them, blah, whatever. It's literally the same thing that we've been doing, where it's like, is it true? Does Gotham really want to destroy itself that badly? Or is it just waiting for the right origin story? They literally say that. So helicopter police come in, and Bruce has to take care of the situation before the helicopter pilot has his mind taken over and they all crash. So he throws one of the Tweedles into the satellite rig, knocks it out, and then he just body slams Mad Hatter off the roof. And he's like, I'm not going to let this city beat me, or I'm not going to let anyone beat this city, or something like that. Regardless, he looks up at Jim, who's also in the copter, and he sees that he's also had a hard day. And they're like, but you know what? It's just as good as any day can be here in Gotham. And then you can imagine that's where the opening credits come in of the show. But no, that's where the issue ends. Next issue, by the way, is a tie-in to Night of the Owls. So, yeah. So it's a standalone story. I don't understand why the White Rabbit character did not tie in to Mad Hatter here. That seemed like an easy fit. She's literally on the cover, so you'd think she would be. But no, she had nothing to do with this as far as I can tell. So, I don't know. It wasn't an awful issue, but it's just, this whole series has just been one of those things of it's taking itself so seriously, but it's not actually saying anything. But what if this city isn't actually better? But then the issue ends with, I'm Batman and I represent the city and I'm better, so therefore the city is better. And it's okay, and we went through 6 issues of what makes you scared. And I'm tired of it, As for this issue, art was okay. Story was pretty blah. I give it a 6 out of 10. It's not doing anything. It's saying a lot of big things, but then when you really think about it for more than a second, it's yeah, and? It's not saying anything of substance, but it's talking in a very authoritative voice, if that makes any sense. So yeah, it's a 6. Whatever. I never really did particularly give this book a chance since it opened on hulked out Two-Face, but it hasn't earned a chance yet, so yeah. Superman number 8, written by Keith Giffen and Dan Jurgens, art also by Dan Jurgens. Last issue, we left off with the new villain Hellspont seemingly knocking out Superman, and nobody picked up Lucy Lane from the train station. Oh no, this issue picks up, oddly enough, with the Lucy Lane part, where we see that Lois had to go pick up Lucy, and she's already got a nasty attitude because Clark wasn't there, so she's like, oh, this Clark guy, what a dick. And Lois is like, well, I'm sure he had a good reason. I hope he had a good reason. And she's like, psh, whatever. Can I get a coffee around here? And then that scene just ends. And then we get into 8 pages of what? Where it's just Superman flying around Metropolis and he's being attacked by some group of glider flying laser guys, and they're like, oh, we got him, we're gonna take him out for all the evil things he's done. And it's just a whole bunch of people attacking him over and over and over and over again for 4 pages. until finally, as he tries fleeing the planet, he's hit by some radiation burst or something from Star Labs, and he falls back down to Earth. And then he wakes up, and it turns out it was all a dream, and he's actually sitting at his desk. But he's still dreaming, I guess, because he sees on his computer how the Justice League has vowed to bring down the super menace of Superman. And Jimmy Olsen's stopping by, and he's like, "Oh, Clark, I know you want to see the good in everybody, but that Superman's a real dick." And he's like, "Oh, what's going on, Jimmy?" And because of something Jimmy said relating to something he said last issue, we're able to have Superman jump out of this. It was all just a dream, all an illusion. And it was all because he had a giant, bug thing inside of his mouth that Hellspont put there. And he's like, "Hi, yeah, sorry, had to put that in there." It's a horrible part of the process, but, it's necessary. And I don't understand what it was even for. Apparently, Hellspawn says it was to show him the horrible yet inevitable future that Superman faces. But, he then tries to justify it saying, no, everybody on my planet uses the weird bug things. It's for educational purposes. Whatever. Point being is that the entire rest of the issue, Hellspawn's like, "I'm sorry I overreacted earlier by blasting you with lasers, but maybe we can just talk about this." And they just talk for a while. And Hellspawn's whole thing is how he was a ruler of Daemonites, and then they turned on him, and they sent him away, but he managed to escape, and now he wants Superman's help to destroy all the Daemonites. And in return, Hellspawn will spare this planet, and he will leave it under Superman's rule. And Superman's like, "Dude, I don't want that. And it sounds like you were kind of a dick, so why would I help you?" And he's like, "You dare turn on Hellspont?" And then Hellspont starts attacking him. Superman is like, "Okay, here's the deal. I was never going to do anything you wanted me to do. You constantly been talking, and I really don't like it. So I'm just going to go ahead and beat you up now." And so he does. And then at one point he hits Hellspont so hard, Hellspont's like, "How dare you?" And he starts choking on his own lungs, and Superman comes up. He's like, "Oh, geez, did I actually kill this guy? Oh, God." And he gets up next to Hellspawn, and Hellspawn's just like, "Sucker," and then blasts Superman again, which seems like a really weird section of this story. But regardless, he puts him through the Himalayas, to which Superman then busts out again, and he's like, "Oh, now you made me angry." And he flies out, and he's going after Hellspawn, but then he realizes, wait a minute, hold on. Okay. When I buzzed out of the mountain, I may have actually killed him, but I don't see any trace of him, so I'm thinking he might have teleported. This isn't the last we're going to see of Hellspawn, is it? As he flies back to Metropolis. If we never see Hellspawn again, I might just riot, because this was completely inconsequential. This was nothing. But anyway, he gets back to Metropolis. He walks in as Clark Kent, and Jimmy's there waiting outside of his apartment because he told Jimmy that he could room with him during last issue's kerfuffles. And as he comes into the bedroom, he's like, "Oh, well, thank you for opening the door, Your Majesty. What is it, Clark? What did I say?" Because there was a whole thing about him rolling over the planet as a king or whatever. I guess I should also mention that. There was a whole bunch on Superman saying, "I don't want to rule this planet because I was adopted by it and I was raised to believe in hope and these people are good people." And, the same thing Superman always says all the time. So, yeah. That's it. That's where we leave off. It was... What? I don't even understand what we were doing. It wasn't incompetent. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't, I don't get what we were going for. It just felt like it was all right. And it felt like the entire purpose of it at the end of this issue was to just get Superman to say, "I'm not trying to rule the world," which we get. We knew that. We understood that because that was the last arc. Showed Superman crunching down his iron fist, and then the real Superman coming in saying, "I don't do that." This issue just did that again, but we also added on this weird stuff on top of Lucy Lane and him possibly thinking the world's going to turn against him, which could be handled well, but the only reason that it happened at all wasn't because he felt it was a thing. It's because Hellspawn thought it was a thing, because it's what happened to him. I don't know. I feel like they tried to line up some parallels between Hellspawn and Superman, but they weren't parallels. They were just completely separate diverging lines, and it's not good. That's the gist of it. Overall, I give this one a 5.5. The only real saving grace here is I do somewhat enjoy the art. It's pretty house style, but it's got just enough flair in the way they do like Hellspawn's art and all that. And I also really like that. I don't know why I like that scene of him just like cough, cough, sucker, and then blasting him. Like that was just funny. So yeah, 5.5. Overall, the story was the weakest part, and I don't know maybe we are going to deal with Hellspawn again next issue. I doubt it. He seems very throwaway, but we'll see what happens in number 9. Green Lantern New Guardians number 8, written by Tony Bedard, art by Tyler Kirkham. Left off last issue with Invictus telling the gang, hey, I'll let you go, but on condition that you kill Larfleeze. And this issue picks up completely separately on the planet Corrigar, aka Sinestro's homeworld, and the weaponer of Quard, aka the guy who invented Sinestro's like power ring and the Yellow Lantern Corps and all that. He's being tried on crimes of, doing those things. And everyone's chanting for his death, and as they're about to execute him, Arkillo shows up and frees him, and he's like, hey, where's our central power battery? Where in the hell is Sinestro? And then we cut back to 1 hour earlier, where the gang is leaving the orrery, and basically it's just confirming that, yes, Kyle did say he would kill Larfleeze, but he didn't really mean it. He was just hoping to get out of that place just so they can go out and charge up their power batteries, because they're all running on fumes. He tells Galanios, hey, Galanios, even though I said I wouldn't be doing this, don't tell Larfleeze. And Galanios is like, righto, got it, totally won't. Bleeze is very upset that they're, like, not doing more about this because, she just got there. She hasn't been around for this whole thing. She's like, what, we're already leaving? God damn it. So, cut to, they escape the orrery. They finally get some signal back in their rings. And immediately Arkilla's like, hey, where's my power battery at? And the ring's like, bzzzt, offline. And then Kyle checks it, and he's like, hey, why is Arkilla's ring offline? And all their rings, all of everybody else's rings are like, the Sinestro Corps is gone, dude. 98% of Sinestro Corps members are either dead or arrested. And Arkilla's like, what the hell's going on out there? And so he just immediately zooms off to go to Corrigar and find any trace of the Sinestro Corps left over. Of course, for all of this, read the Green Lantern book, because that's where most of this is taking place. But he zooms off, and then Indigo Tribe, I think his name is Monk, the Indigo Tribe guy, he's like, hey, I don't actually need to charge my battery, but I also got a call on my ring. It's an emergency transmission from Indigo 1, and it's in Indigo Tribe speak, so we don't know what it says. However, it's also based off the events of Green Lantern, so pretty much go read Green Lantern if you want to know any of this stuff going on. So Kyle's like, all right, hey, I got to go charge up my ring. Glomulus doesn't really need a charge. Bleeze is pretty much at 100%. Saint Walker's got to go do his thing, and Fatality's got to go do her thing. So, me being Kyle, Bleeze, and Glomulus are all going to go to Earth and get back to his power battery, which picks up in the events of Blue Beetle. So read that if you haven't. This is just like a little mini tie-over book for everything. Meanwhile, the other two are going off to their respective planets to charge up on their power batteries. So everyone heads off, and they go do their things. Now we pick back up with Arkillo back on Corrigar. He's fighting his way through this crowd of Corrigarians, whatever they're called. And basically he's like, tell me what's going on, weapons guy. And he's like, cool. So we're in the middle of a fight, so I can't super explain right now. But maybe if we just go ahead and fight our way through this. How much charge you got left? And he's like 2%. So he ends up tweaking one of the little, like, tiny laser guns they've got to unleash the entire charge in one shot, which then takes down an entire building, of which they are able to hide in a manhole cover underneath. So it will take time for them to dig through the rubble and find out that they aren't actually under there. But he's like, all right, look, here's the thing. They're not going to stay for over long. I will tell you everything you want to know. But first, let's go find my secret project that I have hidden down here. Cut to fatality on Zamaron, home of the Star Sapphires. She's charging up and she's like, hey, so I know you wanted me to go find that busted ring, but like a lot of weird stuff happened. And we found an angel named Invictus. And they're like, oh, you Invictus? Yeah, no, don't mess with him. He's got something big going on. But if you're saying he came through a black hole, that's not actually within Invictus's power. So somebody's helping him on this side. So a little bit more mystery. Going back to Arkillo and just saying the story of basically what happened in Green Lantern, where Sinestro went back to the Green Lantern's side because the Yellow Lanterns weren't following his rules while he was gone. He destroyed the entire Corps, more or less, and took their battery hostage. And now the Sinestro Corps is basically defunct. And the weapons guy only managed to survive because he just took off his ring as soon as he saw Sinestro was ripping through everybody, and he went into hiding. So, yeah. So anyway, Arkillo doesn't believe it because he's like, no, my master, Sinestro, he would never, how dare he, blah, blah, blah. And he asks, the weapons guy asks Arkillo how he possibly could have not heard all of this, and Arkillo tells him about the whole orrery and how there's no signal in there, and the weapons guy's like, oh, I'm very interested in having that. That could be a very good weapon. So here's the deal, Arkillo, as Arkillo's charge runs out. I made a new yellow ring and lantern. It is very unstable because I made it so quick, but it is yours, and you can be a Yellow Lantern again if you help me get that orrery. So Arkillo, of course, takes the ring, says his oath, and goes after all the Korrigarians who have now surrounded them in their place. And that's it. That's where the issue ends. It's good. It's fine. It suffers from the thing of all these other books are doing things and they feel like they're one tier above this book. So this one feels like it's kind of just forced to throw its characters over to deal with the things that other writers are handling. That being said, I like the way that it's doing it. Like the Yellow Lantern Corps in a different book has been effectively shut down. And so this book that was messing with the Yellow Lantern, whether they had a say in that or not, it feels like, okay, what would be the natural reaction to that? And he doesn't have a charge and he needs to get a new way to get a charge. And so they introduce this new ring that's not reliant on Sinestro. I like that. It's a good way of dealing with it. I feel that it's a sign of a good writer when they're put into a corner and they have to actually write their way out of it. And they do so without just random contrivances. It is a little bit of a contrivance to have the weapons guy have a just spare ring around, but I think they justified it well enough throughout the story. As for all the other stuff, yeah, it's whatever's going to be going on in Blue Beetle, definitely read up on that because it is apparently crucial to the next couple issues going on. But overall, it's just a kind of a, okay, we got out of arc number 1. Let's figure out what we're going to be doing in arc number 2. But right now, it's a literal recharging period. So overall, I give this a 7. It's good. It's not as great as it could be, but I'm at least having fun with it. And isn't that really what it's all about? Aquaman number 8, written by Geoff Johns, art by Ivan Reis. We left off last issue with a woman named Guara showing up saying the Seer is dead, trying to kill Stephen Shin, and Aquaman being like, what the hell's going on around here? So 6 years ago, we see that Aquaman has, I guess, come out to the public, but I don't think it was under his own volition. We see that his father died recently, was killed, of course, and there's a whole bunch of press just surrounding his house. And everyone's like, hey, Aquaman, we got a word, blah, blah, blah. Who are you? Tell us about Atlantis. And he's just crying over the fact that his dad died. We see Stephen Shin making his way through the crowd. And they're like, hey, you're the guy who told us that Aquaman existed and discovered Atlantis and all that. And, of course, that's not... inherently good at this point. So Aquaman literally busts down his own door and be like, what do you want from me? And there's like, we just want to know who you are. And Aquaman tears off his shirt and he's like, I know I'm none of you. I get that now. Goodbye forever. And he goes over to the cliff, jumps down into the ocean, and Stephen the whole time is like, I'm sorry, Arthur, please wait. Oh. But yeah, we see Stephen just standing there into the night, and then the seasons pass, and then 1 year later, we see Aquaman again, and right now he's wearing the weird necklace thing he had at the beginning of New 52, and supposedly he just came back after 1 year, because I think that would have put it around, Justice League beginning territories. So then we cut back to present, and Steven shows a picture of the others, aka the team, to Mara, and Mara's like, who are these people? And Yara's like, oh, well, we all just came together by happenstance, like we all were necessary, but me and Arthur had a connection. And Mara's like, uh-huh. And Arthur just goes, a telepathic connection. She's like, that's not better, Arthur. So basically the beginning of the issue comes down to Guara wants to kill Stephen Shin because Black Manta came after the Seer, which she had another name, but I can't remember what it is for now. And the only way that he would know where she is because of Stephen Shin's involvement. So clearly he has to be involved. And Arthur's like, I don't think so, but let's figure this out. Doctor, I want you to keep on looking into the sinking of Atlantis. Meanwhile, I'm going to go with Guara and we're going to deal with this. And Mara's not exactly thrilled that he's going with this beautiful woman, but she trusts him and he says, I love you. And she teleports them out via a little bell around her neck or something. And as soon as they leave, Mara immediately turns to Stephen and is just like, all right, you're not going to look into the sinking of Atlantis. You're going to tell me everything you know about this team, and you're going to tell me everything you know about all of his past. So then we get a story 6 years ago of the team, the others, and they're all chasing after Black Manta, all outrunning explosions and whatnot. But as the explosions go off, they're setting off avalanches that are going to destroy a nearby town and kill all of its inhabitants. And the rest of the team is like, we have to go save them. We can't let that many innocents die. But Aquaman's like, we need to go after Black Manta because he's the one killing these people and we need to catch him. And everyone's like, no, we're going to go save the town. And Aquaman's like, all right, whatever. He doesn't actually go with them though. But then we see the group of people. There's a German one. There's as far as I can tell, a U.S. one. And they all have different gold pieces of jewelry or whatever. One has a mask. And the one that's U.S., wears a mask over his head and he's got some military tags. He clanks his wrists together and it makes a shield around the town, protects him from the avalanche. But then there's one small girl who's left on the outside of the shield, and Aquaman swoops in, saves her, drops her off, and says, there, we did it. And Black Manta got away. Was it worth this? And they were like, yeah, we saved all those lives. It was definitely worth it. He's like, how many people have already died for the greater good? He's like, revenge is not a greater good, Arthur. That's not... Stop doing that. And he's like, all right, whatever. All of you just go. But then the Seer comes up and is just like, hey, Arthur, I saw your future. And he's like, what, do I catch Black Manta? She's like, better. You find happiness. And then we see her dead in the jungle. They're looking over her body and they realize, okay, her little gold trinket thing is gone. It's been taken. So we need to... If he's able to get that, if he's able to find her, he can find the rest of the team. So immediately they're opened fire upon by people who are shooting them for the sake of Black Manta, I guess. And then we see Black Manta is in Heidelberg, Germany at a United States Army Health Center. And he says, all right, I'm here, and I found another one. And that's where the issue leaves off. I like the play between Aquaman and Mara at the beginning of just you had this girl in your life and you didn't tell me, I like that play of him just being awkward about it. I appreciate that in Aquaman's past, he was just such a dick. It was good. It's good to see that, okay, he's made this weird character development that we weren't actually privy to, but it's been there, Art is fantastic. I can't fault the art at all. It is amazing the whole way through. I guess my biggest concern right now is the fact of we're just being drip fed information about this team, and we're not quite told. Like, I happen to know that the guy with the bracelets is named Prisoner of War, or maybe it's just POW. There is a little like picture here that has a list of all their names. Vostok X is the German guy. There's one named The Operative. But I don't know. I don't want this arc to end without getting to know them a lot better, because it seems like an interesting team at the very least. So, yeah. Overall, I'm going to get this issue a 7.5. I think it's very well done. And, again, looks fantastic. The beats with Mara, I think, play off far funnier than I can ever possibly describe it, because it is just a solid panel of her just glaring. So, no, very good book, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the story continues. The Flash number 8, written by Francis Manapul, art by Brian Buccellato. Brian also did some of the writing as well. And last issue, we ended up with Barry entering into the Speed Force and meeting some guy in there. Just some guy saying, hey, you're going to help me or you're going to die. So, yeah, this issue picks up back in World War II, 1944. We have a man, I don't think he's given a name yet, but Hines is his last name, and he's got this cool experimental plane with some turbines on it that's allowing to go a hell of a lot faster, and he's testing it out, giving it a whirl against the Axis powers or whatever, and then all of a sudden a portal opens up, he goes inside and he disappears. And we see that that's the guy who attacked Barry, and his name is Turbine in here, because of course it is. And he came from World War II, and now he's trapped in the Speed Force. So apparently he knows everything about the Flash. He even straight up calls him Barry Allen. He's like, I know all about you. I've seen your life. But Flash like flips him over and it's just like, all right, look, we got to stop. I don't know what you think you're doing, but we got to figure out what's going on here. And then Turbine starts spinning, which I guess is his power, and starts throwing rocks at Barry, to which Barry just zooms in there, knees him in the face, and knocks him out for a bit. And then Barry's like, all right, I just want to talk. I didn't want to fight. I just want to talk. So what's going on here? Have you seen a half of a boat that happens to contain a woman named Iris West? Have you, by chance? And they're like, no one's here but me, and I'm sick of being here. I need to go back home. Came from World War II. And then they just get into the gist of what the Speed Force is and how he knows all about Barry. And we see in the background all these memories constantly moving around. And a lot of them are Barry-centric. And it seems that he's just been here and he's watched Barry's entire life. And he's just able to see all this past, present. It's all just a blur here. So then we get the clarification. This is important. So we get the clarification that Barry... Okay, throughout time, the Speed Force has constantly been just like absorbing random objects from history, and it all comes in here. And usually it's able to just like zoom its way through, and it ends up either like in the future or the past or just some other place entirely. But sometimes it gets stuck in here because there's a bunch of like debris that it can sometimes stick to. Barry, once he started running, acted as a release valve for this Speed Force energy. So once he started running, these random pluckings from history stopped happening. So that's why Barry has to keep on running all the time. I guess. It's a little confusing. Regardless, at some point, Barry's walking around the Speed Force, and he's like, I think the Speed Force wants us to go that way, to the future. And Turbine's like, future? No. We want to go back to the past to get answers. Come on, let's go to the past, far away from that dangerous future thing. So he starts moving his way to the past. Meanwhile, Central City, there's a funeral for cops who have died, one of which is, of course, Barry Allen, because everyone thought he was in the other half of the boat. And Patty's there mourning, along with a couple other members of the group. And they're all saying how Flash is a menace, and all this happened because of him. But at one point, I forget his name, David Singh, I believe it is, he's brought up, and he's like, hey, David, are you going to introduce me to your friends? And it's the like musical maestro or whatever, who I guess they explicitly say was Pied Piper. He was a vigilante. He did things, and now he is reformed. And you can, as soon as he's being introduced to the group, David's like, "Oh yes, this is my friend." And you should see this glare on his face because it's so obvious they're dating. But regardless, cut back to the Speed Force, and we get all that stuff about how time moves in different ways. And there's an entire Mayan temple in here, a locomotive train, a tank. Like, there's just a bunch of stuff in here. And Turbine tells Barry how he has been trying to escape every time that he sees Barry's, like, light, because I guess he exudes some sort of energy whenever he runs. And as such, he's been trying to spin his way out, and that's what's been causing, like, the vortexes and things that have been causing Barry so many issues. So he gets real pissed off at Turbine for doing that, and he's like, "No, we're not gonna." And Turbine's just like, "Look, I'll stop. Well, just send me back home to 1944, and I will never do it again." And he's like, "No, if you mess with the past, you mess with the entire time stream. You're going to our present. That's final." And he's like, "No, you got to send me back home." And he starts whirlwinding Barry around, knocking him around the Speed Force area. And Barry jumps into the whirlwind, grabs him, and is like, "Look, buddy, screw this. We're going to wherever the Speed Force tells me to go." And they jump into the future area, and Barry loses one of his little wing caps off his ear, to which we see at some point later Iris and the rest of the people on the boat stumble across. So they know Flash was here. Meanwhile, cut to Gorilla City. Grodd, the son of Grodd, is being prepped for battle against his own father for the right to become a man, which I guess is just a thing in Gorilla City, is a battle to the death with your own father. And he starts fighting his dad, and his dad's like, "Psh, you are pathetic. You will never take my spot on the Gorilla City's throne." And he's like, "I'm better than you in every way, father. Allow me to show you." And he headbutts his father, knocks him out. And as everyone's chanting the name of Grodd, and he's like, "I am your new king. I am King Grodd," Barry comes tumbling out of the Speed Force right next to them. And that's where we end the trade as a whole, but also just that issue. This book was exposition on crack. It wasn't bad. I liked the different things they were doing, but literally, like, this was all like, here's how the Speed Force kind of sort of functions when you're in it. And it's really dense, and it's really hard to get across. Turbine is a whatever sort of character there. It's fine. It's decent, but it's just so, like, okay, yeah, no, there's time and stuff. It just felt like, look, we just got to spend one issue to get this all out, and then we don't have to deal with it again. And that was this. As such, this particular issue suffered in terms of just storytelling, but overall it was okay. They kept Turbine as an interesting character throughout, of trying to keep Barry from going to the place he needed to go. He was a good conflict, but it was just so dense beyond that. So overall, I give this one a 6.5. I think it's fine. The art is great. It's fantastic the whole way through, but just the story was just like, there was none. It was no story, really. It was all just a exposition dump that needed to happen, but I wish it need not happen in my time. The Fury of Firestorm, number 8, written by Ethan Van Sciver and Joe Harris, art by Ethan Van Sciver. The last issue ended with Ronnie being taken captive, and then Posar coming in and killing off a bunch of the captives, but then Ronnie seemingly losing his arm, and also some other weird energy stuff. Really unclear. This issue picks up with Posar still taking out all the other rogue Firestorms that are surrounding Ronnie, and Ronnie in his head can hear some voice saying, like, "Hey, can you hear me? You need to focus." And yeah, that's the gist of the eye catch. But then we cut over to Paris, where Jason is currently watching over, I don't know if it has a name, but like the grassy area around the Eiffel Tower, because I guess that they were informed that there's going to be another rogue Firestorm attack here very soon. So Jason's watching over it, and he picks up on a energy signature that matches the previous Rogue Firestorm, and he sees this figure running across the yard. So he goes down, swoops up the person, and we see that it's just a little old harmless lady who happens to have an American flag rolled up that has chemicals like smeared on it in a letter Z. And he's like, man, they use this lady as bait, and they just gave her like this thing that she didn't know what it was. Gosh darn it. But what that means that the real one's probably here now. And he looks over and he sees this Rogue Firestorm just running his way over to the Eiffel Tower, to which he's like, all right, well, time to stop this. But then immediately he's blasted out of the air by some other Firestorm person, and they start speaking French, and then we see that it is a female one that we saw the picture of last issue, and her name is Firehawk. So yeah, there's that. And then we get a British one as well whose name is Hurricane, and they basically are just like, all right, we're here to take care of Rogue Firestorms. Are you Rogue Firestorm? It's like, no, I'm with Zither. You guys, did you guys not read the files, man? And it's like, all right, well, we're going to use our job. We're going to isolate the signature or whatever. And they get a match on where the Rogue Firestorm is, and they go off to deal with it, and they basically tell Jason to, like, how about you don't cause any more international incidents, Kay? And Jason's like, oh, this sucks. So go back to Posar. He's still blasting through all the Rogue Firestorms and very handily beating them. Like, he's not even really breaking a sweat here. But we see more of an image of who's talking to Ronnie in his head, and we see this figure with glasses telling him that he needs to concentrate. Again, not clear who. My guess, Professor Stein, but that's just me. So then we go back to Paris. Firehawk is making like some constructs basically out of her nuclear energy. There's like a horse that she tells, like she's getting everyone evacuated. Meanwhile, Hurricane is chasing down the Rogue Firestorm agent, and basically just stops him dead in his path and evaporates him. He's like, haha, we did it. Score one more point for the Union Jack. He literally says that. But then Jason picks up on another energy signature. And he's like, wait a minute. What if the old lady wasn't a distraction? What if she was just as like a spy? And then we see an old lady Firestorm hobbling her way over to the Eiffel Tower while no one else is paying attention. And they're like, oh, Jesus. So Jason rushes over there. He also gets a glimpse of something in his head. It's like, it kind of looks like Captain Atom, but Firestormy, and with a big old circle in his forehead. And he's like, is that Ronnie? What's going on here? Anyway, the lady explodes, starts to take out the Eiffel Tower. Firehawk tries to control the explosion, but ultimately she can't. It gets away from her, and the Eiffel Tower starts collapsing on top of civilians down beneath. And Jason immediately like reaches up and turns it all into rose petals as they are all descending upon the crowd underneath. And he's just like, all right, I'm in over my head. And then we get one last cut over to Ronnie. Posar has one of the Firestorms by the neck, and he's like, all right, tell me where you guys meet and where you're getting your stuff, and I promise I will make your death quick. And he's like, you're not going to get anything out of me. The future belongs to... And then he dies. And Posar's like, wait a minute, hold on, I didn't do that. What's going on? And then we see Ronnie standing there, and he's infuriated. His eyes are red, and he just disintegrated this guy. Still missing a hand, mind you. And Posar's like, did that feel good? You feel good using your powers like that? And he's like, yes, it did. And he's like, cool, follow me. I'll show you how to do it some more. And that's it. That's where the issue leaves off. Next issue, it says, is a crossover and or slight, like, meeting of the minds with Justice League International. So catch up on that, I guess, if you want. But I like it. I guess let me get that out of the way first, is I do like this issue. But it also kind of feels like the Jason part of the story was there strictly for him to meet the other Firestorms, because at no point in the previous issue did we set up, hey, you're going to Paris because there's another, like, it was totally thought of afterwards, and it's just like, yeah, we just need him to meet up with these other two and show that they're actually competent, they have training, and they're able to do these things, whereas Jason feels a bit in over his head, which is good character development because he's used to being the smartest and best performing guy in the room. So yeah, a little bit there, but I really feel like the Ronnie stuff was pretty set in stone. That being said, it did feel pretty slow moving, where it was every time we cut to him, it was just Posar destroying the other Firestorms and Ronnie being like, something's talking to me in my head, until we got to the last page where finally it did something. So yeah, this issue kind of felt like each side of the story, Jason and Ronnie, both had one thing they needed to do, but they had to stretch it out over the entire issue. And as such, it felt a little bit lackluster there. But I do like the things that they're doing. They're setting up Jason as reluctantly being part of this bigger Firestorm thing, whereas Ronnie is going through and giving into the dark side, more or less. And I'm sure they'll reunite at some point later down the road, but in terms of diverging storylines, I like both of these equally. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 7. I think it's decently enough well done, and the art is pretty fantastic throughout. It's got a stylistic point to it of just an insane amount of detail that I can really appreciate. So yeah, see what happens next issue, and or maybe in the next issue of Justice League International. It's a little bit unclear. The Savage Hawkman number 8, written by Tony S. Daniel and James Bonny, art by Philip Tan. Left off last issue with the end of this weird zombie saga, and then Hawkman was attacked by Askana from the first arc, aka a shape-shifting woman demon thing. And yeah, the opening of this issue is just a fight scene between the two of them, where it's like, oh, Hawkman, is that all you have? I'm a little more than disappointed. And they just keep fighting over and over and over until finally Hawkman at one point gets her by the throat, pulls out an nth metal like axe sword thing, and then she's like, oh, please don't kill me. I just want your help. And he's like, that's how you ask for help? What the hell? So they get to talking for a short bit, and apparently well, first off, she found him because of she has like 12 senses apparently, one of which can pick up micro vibrations of the nth metal. I don't think it's going to come up, but regardless, it's there. So they get to talking, and apparently she fought him because she wanted to see if he was up to the task of taking on this thing. And there are apparently alien agents from Askana's homeworld, and they're here to take her back and put her on trial or at least execute her for a crime that she did not commit. So she's asking Hawkman for help with that, and Hawkman's like, you've got a lot of alien tech, and you can fend for yourself, so no. And he tries to walk off, but then she's like, well, if that's the case, you remember how I asked you not to kill me? Please kill me instead, because it'll be better than anything that they'll put me through. And he's like, fine, I guess I'll help. So, cut to, I guess, the group arriving on Earth. I think it's the group. We don't actually ever see that it is the group of guys, but they arrive and they're like, oh, begin scan of human population center, locate the violator, and they go off and find this. Meanwhile, I'm blanking on his actual name. Carter Hall, instead of Hawkman, goes to Professor Ziegler's lab, and he's like, hey, Emma, hi, your dad called me and said he wanted me to check something out. Can I go see him? And she was like, my dad goes, okay, hold on. Hey, Dad, did you call Carter? And he's like, no, I didn't. And it's like, oh, this isn't anything menacing. He just actually has like some memory loss sort of thing, like probably some level of dementia or Alzheimer's. And that's going to be an issue moving on. So, yeah. But anyway, he then leaves, and Emma's like, what's the matter? Got a hot date? And he's like, kinda. And Emma's like, jealous about it, which Hawkman picks up on. But regardless, he flies off as Hawkman, and down in Lower Manhattan, they manage to track down this group of alien people who I guess are after Askana. And as soon as they do, they start to just talk about Askana, like, and what she's able to do, because they can only like project a human form at night for some reason, and Askana can do it whenever, and they were genetically engineered lethal. Like, they just get into this talk about her backstory or whatever, and then she says, like, I feel your hatred, Hawkman, but beneath that, I feel something more. You've got a hole in you, something you need to solve. And then they're surrounded by these guys. Like, somehow they weren't keeping an eye on them, despite the fact they never visually took their eyes off them, but they're surrounded by these guys, and they've got these weird metallic tentacle barb things that are attacking the both of them. So they start slashing through them as best they can, but then they grab Askana, pick her up, and then toss her off the building, and then focus on Hawkman. And Hawkman's like, wait a minute, I get the funny feeling that you weren't here for Askana. Son of a bitch. So then he continues to fight through them. Askana comes back and helps with the fight, but Hawkman just lets loose. He's just literally smushing these things underneath giant nth metal swords and maces and axes, and he's just destroying all of them with his rage. Until finally there's nothing but goo left, and he talks to Askana. He's like, hey, something you want to tell me? And she's like, okay. They were agents sent from the High Council. They were here to find the person who released Morpheus from his tomb, which is Dr. Kane. But Dr. Kane made them a deal to hand you over, and I was just enforcing that. I'm sorry. And she's like, well, I don't care. And Askana says, they're not done, though. That was just the first wave. More of them will come. And Hawkman's like, bring it. Because I'm full of rage now, and I'm able to take on anything. I'm Hawkman. And that's where the issue ends. And I have some very, very, very bad news. The next issue, the art is no longer Philip Tan, and it's not even written by Tony S. Daniel or James Bonny anymore. We're getting a new creative team. And I couldn't remember who the second name was. But the one name that stood out because it is art is, it's Rob Liefeld. And to say that my disappointment is immeasurable is an understatement, because dear God, I've seen the cover art and it's not good. So yeah, this issue, it's good. It's solid. I think it was just kind of all right, the new creative team is coming on next issue and I don't have time to start a new arc, so I'm just going to do this little wrapping up a thing that I left open before. It's good. It's fine. It's nothing to really write home about, but it's perfectly acceptable. I think my biggest issue with it is that it treats Askana like some character that we're like deeply involved with, whereas if I remember correctly from the issue that she was in, like we had the like main focus of, she didn't really have that much depth to her, and the fact that she's come knocking again just kind of feels out of place. It was a good story that was told, but it was just kind of a weak setup to get there. So art, again, fantastic. Philip Tan's always good with this sort of thing. So overall, I'm going to give it a 6. And most of that comes down to I like the ending scene where Hawkman's just letting his rage out, because it does finally live up to the title of Savage Hawkman. And I like the art. So that's really what gets it to 6. But next time, we enter into a new age of horrors with the Rob Liefeld run. All-Star Western number 8, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. We left off last issue with Jonah getting into a fight club, and then he has to fight with this deadly woman that he saw earlier, named, I think it was like ZB or something. Also, there's Nighthawk and Cinnamon running around, that they're other vigilantes down in New Orleans. Just deal. So this issue picks up. Nighthawk and Cinnamon are going around. There's a anarchist group called the August 7, I believe, that are blowing up stuff because they don't like minorities. And so, yeah, they're going around and trying to find who supplied the August 7 with the explosives, so they're just attacking a bunch of stuff. Jonah is in the fight club doing his battle stuff, but before we get to that, the one narrating all this is Dr. Arkham, who basically, he didn't get invited to either of these things. So right now, he's just chilling out, smoking some opium, and getting laid. He's having the time of his life. Like, I cannot understand that. So, cut to Jonah. He's fighting this woman, and it is just a all-out, no-holds-barred fight, but he's not really landing a lot of hits on her. Like, she's drawing a lot of blood, but all he's doing is managing to throw her around a little bit. And in the end, he ends up getting him, like, knocked down on his back, and she gets on top of him and says, like, oh, I like you, gives him a kiss, and then one of the men out in the audience, who I believe was the one who told Jonah to go in there and fight, gets Z's attention and holds up a card with 7 dots on it, meaning I guess he's part of the club now. So then we cut back to Arkham, where the cops are raiding his place, and they're like, oh, yes, where were the opium police? You're under arrest. And he's like, I'm actually doing a study on opium because I am a doctor, and that is what I do. And he's like, yeah, all right, sure. And then Arkham gets thrown in jail for a while. So cut to Jonah. He is currently in a bathtub, and Z is... I'm calling her Z. They don't say her name enough. I think it's ZC. There you go. Got it off. So ZC is tending to his wounds and whatnot. She's like, oh, you got a lot of scars here. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I like them. It's like, because you're crazy. But regardless, she offers up saying, hey, we want you to be part of our club because one of the guys said that you also hate immigrants. And we think you being Confederate soldier and whatnot, you're probably super into, like, what we're planning to do. And he's like, cool. So when do I meet the people in the club? And she's like, first things first, you got to prove yourself. There's a boat with a bunch of immigrants out on the dock. It's coming in tonight. We need you to blow it up. And he's like, what if I don't want to? And she's like, you're gonna. Because, like, we have offered you this, so you're smart to take it. So she's like, all right, well, I'm going to need some explosives. And they're like, don't worry about that. You'll meet a guy down at the docks. So then we cut back to the place where Nighthawk, Cinnamon, and Jonah are meeting up afterwards. And Hex just tells them, like, all the stuff that went on. They're also wondering where Arkham is because he's not around. But, you know, he's an adult. He can handle himself. But then Hex is like, okay, so they want me to blow up a boat. And unless you guys have a better idea, we're just going to go ahead and do that. And they're like, well, we haven't found the other members of the August 7. You've got 3 of them. You can name 3 of them. So maybe we just grab them and try to make them talk. And Jonah's like, they're not going to talk. So I think we just go ahead with blowing up the boat idea. And Jonah starts to make his way out to, you know, do that thing. And Nighthawk and Cinnamon are like, you're not going to kill a bunch of innocent people. And he's like, stop me then. And he takes the necklace that gave Nighthawk his, like, super abilities. And he's like, oh, do you think you can stand up against a gun now? And he just walks off with it. Meanwhile, cut to Arkham in jail. He's, like, being held up against the wall by this big, brutish guy. And he's like, I didn't mean anything by it, but I'm just saying that maybe that your life of troubles could be traced back to the fact that your mother was a sex worker. And basically, he just has a full-page breakdown here of talking this guy through his mommy issues of, like, why he turned to crime and how it made him feel when his mom brought home strange men. Like, I love this page. This is a fantastic page of just Arkham just, like, psychoanalyzing this guy. And, like, it's just, I love it. It's hard to explain it. Yeah, I think you get it, though. Anyway, the guy who arrested him came in and was like, hey, so we called the people in Gotham you said to call. They actually vouched for you. So I guess you are a doctor. I still don't like you were smoking opium, but you're free to go. And immediately he just starts outlining. He's like, oh, thank you so much. I'm sure my compatriots are looking for me. You know, a Mr. Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex, the famed bounty hunter. We're here on a special mission to track down evil anarchists and named the August 7, and we will do nothing but stop them. And then it's revealed that the cop who arrested him is part of the August 7 because, of course he is. So later that night, Jonah's at the docks. He meets up with another man. He's like, hey, you got the explosives? And he's like, I got something even better for you. And he pries open a box, and inside is Arkham. And he's like, God damn it, Arkham, what did you tell them? And then we see the whole group of the August 7, which includes the cop, the 3 people we saw last issue, and then some random woman that I'm unfamiliar with, but she's here. So immediately they're like, all right, so what are you going to do? And they're like, well, here's the thing. We thought you're one of us. You fooled us. We don't like being fooled. So we're going to blow up that boat. But the difference now is you're also going to be on that boat. So they bind up Hex and Arkham and start rowing their way across the harbor to get onto the boat. And that's where we leave off. It's good. I do want to say next issue, surprisingly enough, is a tie-in to Night of the Owls, the Batman event going on. I say surprisingly enough because that whole event is structured around it being one specific night, and this is the 1800s. So I'm curious to see how they're going to pull that off. But with this issue, I liked it. I really like, strangely enough, Arkham stuff. I think that just giving him this role of like bumbling his way through things was a fantastic choice, and it was funny the whole way throughout. Just the way that they show Arkham's expressions between the fear of like possibly angering this man while doing his psychoanalysis to just the face he makes while he's smoking opium. All this is fantastic. So hats off to the artist Moritat. But no, it's that was, in terms of the backdrop story of the August 7, I don't know. It's fine. It's not anything great yet. Maybe it can get there, but it just feels to me like, okay, so we traded in one secret society that's doing bad things for another secret society that's doing bad things. And mind you, the Night of the Owl storyline revolves around the Court of the Owls, which is another secret society doing bad things. If these all manage to tie together, I'll be very impressed, but it just doesn't feel like it's there yet. So overall, I'm going to give this issue a 7. I think it's good. I've already explained why. I don't have to say anything else. So we'll see what happens next issue in the Night of the Owls tie-in. Blackhawks number 8, written by Mike Costa, art by Cafu. We left off last issue with the big bad Matteo Bischoff for all of 2 issues, getting a plane landed on him. And Kunoichi is awoken and seemingly has the mother mind inside of her because of nanites or whatever. This issue picks up with the team escaping from the situation that they had gotten themselves into, and everyone's running in. Kunoichi's been injured. Matteo Bischoff is apparently in custody. It really looked like that plane killed him, but he's in custody. So, whatever. So they get Kunoichi back, and she's currently passed out, but they're like, hey, when she woke up, she kind of sounded really robotic. Maybe we should be worried about that. They're like, no time. Get in the plane. Let's go. So everyone's getting their asses back to HQ, and then they're going to have to investigate the fact that they were attacked by nanites, because now all of them supposedly have some form of nanite in them, which was, a big deal before. So Kunoichi's brought into the medical bay. Irish is left outside. He needs to be scanned down for stuff. And as she's in there, there's this overarching narration on top of it that's saying, all right, here's the thing. When you're making AI, the biggest problem is making so many like chips and things, so many nodes that the AI can use. However, if you are able to make them, they can be so small that they can basically function as a higher processing human brain in a itty-bitty tiny fraction of the space that the human brain actually requires. So you could theoretically have an AI inside of your own brain and you wouldn't even know it. That's what that's saying. The whole reason it's saying it is because that's exactly what Kunoichi has. So she wakes up from her coma, she immediately grabs a scalpel and starts attacking the different doctors. And when she speaks, turns out she's mother mind now. She's like, ooh, it's been so long since I've had a real body. So let's go and find the mainframe. And she starts making her way through the building, which we don't see, but immediately everyone's like, huh, that's weird. In my super high-tech facility, I can't use basic things like the door function or the AC. It's almost like the entire system has been turned off. Uh-oh. And then we see flipping on the monitor is Mother Mind, who's like, hey, I never actually left. I was always kind of around. So now I'm here and I'm going to hack into the UN global mainframes and take over the world. Ha 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 ha. And immediately everyone's like, all right, we have an emergency situation. Let's deal with this. So Canada immediately makes the thing of, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get into the cockpit. We're going to fire off some missiles at the server room, and hopefully that's going to take out like something, the cooling system or something. And Lincoln immediately hops on the comms. He's like, yep, that's the best plan we got. Let's go. So immediately everyone launches into action, and they show how, they don't even show that they did it. They just assume that, it happened. They blew it up. So then Mother Mind's like, what did you do? And she's like, oh, we blew up your cooling systems. You only got 15 minutes, and there's no way you're ever going to be able to take over the UN mainframe in that amount of time. She's like, well, fine. If this is going to be my grave, it's going to be your grave too. Then we cut to inside Kunoichi's mind, that she's structured it to look like her childhood home, and inside of it is Wildman, aka her boyfriend who died. And she's like, oh, so you're just a dream? Like, you're just part of my subconscious? He's like, no, because of the issue where we went and met with Mothermind, I'm actually real. I am a real AI that's inside your brain. It was a copy of me. Like, I'm the copy thing. I don't have all of the memories, but I remember you, and I also want to help take down Mothermind. So they show that because she's living in Kunoichi's brain, she's actually just sitting in the front room of the house doing her thing. But if they can fight her in the brain, she'll be forced to devote resources to that fight and will be ignoring the stuff that she needs to pay attention to out there long enough for someone to get a foothold up on her. So they go through, they start fighting her, just a bunch of punches and kicks and stuff like that. We see her getting more distracted out in the real world, not able to hit targets like Lincoln and whatnot. And Wildman's telling her, like, hey, just remember, Kunoichi, this is your brain. It's your house. You know where everything is. You have the upper hand. And she gets a samurai sword and just chops straight through Mothermind. And by the time the team gets to her, they're like, hey, guys, sorry, I let in an evil AI in here, so my bad. But then Mothermind pops back up on the screen. She's like, all right, fine, whatever, but I'm going to bring this whole building down on you. And a hole opens up on the roof, and we see that it is Irish and Attila. And they're like, hey, we got a plane going. How about we all jump out of here before she manages to turn off the plane? So they all get up in there, and they're like, all right, what do we do? She's she's in charge, basically, of our base that has a huge weapons depository. And Andrew Lincoln just says, all right, blow it up. And they just nuke the facility. Complete destruction, no chance of survival. And so they land in a little plateau nearby, and they're like, okay, so the Blackhawks team is kind of over, isn't it? The UN guy's like, yeah, we're not giving you $2 billion more, but, I mean, maybe we could, start fresh, start smaller. Maybe we could do something like that. And Andrew Lincoln's like, yeah, I'm going to fake my death, because, I've done it before, and this just seems like a good time to do it again. So everyone's like, wow, all right, so the Blackhawks are done. That's the end, isn't it? And Kunoichi's like, no, I don't think it is. In fact, I think we're just resting our wings. It's only the beginning. And that's the end. It's final issue of Blackhawks, and it's fine. It's a good enough send-off. The issue that I've had with all of these 8-issue series, the ones that get canceled so early on, is that you can tell they had this big sprawling idea for a story to begin with, and they set up a bunch of characters that can come up later, but then when they're told it's going to be canceled, probably somewhere around issue 5, they're just kind of left scrambling of like, oh, okay, well, what can I throw away out of this big plot and still somehow make it make sense in the end? So we just lose a bunch of stuff. I feel like this guy had the Matteo Bischoff thing laid out, and then he was just forced to be like, and it's done. Okay, we just got to pick up the pace here. Mothermind was like the main thing that I developed, so that should be the big bad now. And there we go. We're all done with the story. If this was actually the plan the whole time, I apologize, but it just seems a little bit rushed. I did like it, though. I did like this particular issue, and the story as a whole was interesting. Strangely enough, Andrew Lincoln has been showing up in a bunch of other books, so I think Voodoo's the one that has the biggest impact, but there are a couple books out there where he's just been showing up. So, gone but not forgotten, I suppose. Overall, I give this issue a 7. I think as an issue itself, it deserves a 7. As a send-off to the entire series, probably not so much, though I do appreciate a good nuking of the entire facility. That's a good way to end the series as a whole. So yeah, 7 for this, and I would say next issue, but there isn't, so decent series. Voodoo number 8, written by Joshua Williamson and Sami Basri. Last issue we left off with Voodoo appearing before Priscilla, Blackjack, and Fallon. Blackjack attacked, and Voodoo cut off his head. So yeah, this issue picks up immediately in the aftermath of that. Priscilla's narrating is just like, I'm sorry, did I just see myself cut off the head of that man? So she starts freaking out about it. Immediately Fallon, though, is on his case, just being like, okay, you're going to die now. Like, this is going to happen. She's like, I'm stronger than you, right? Like, there's not a lot you can do. And Fallon realizes that she doesn't really have a lot of cards to play here, so she plays the one that she does have, which is Priscilla. And she takes Priscilla hostage, gun to her head, and says, if you don't let us leave, if you don't surrender, whatever it is she's looking for here, then I'm going to kill her. And she is definitely the key for you to get answers about your past. You need her alive. And Priscilla's like, Fallon, what in the hell are you doing? And she's like, shut up, all right, just go with it. And Voodoo is just like, okay, but I don't care about that. That's not that big of a deal to me. But you can tell it is. Meanwhile, two of the Black Razors who are watching the scene are just like, okay, so Blackjack just died. What do we do? And they're like, we need new orders. So they call over to Andrew Lincoln of the Blackhawks, the book that just had its last issue this week. And it even makes the mention of him faking his own death, which he did in that issue. And he showed up at the Black Razor compound where the break-in happened, and he gets a call being like, yeah, hello? What? Blackjack's dead? All teams move out. We gotta go. And that'll come up later. So as Priscilla's trying to figure out what the hell Fallon is doing, because she's not being very upfront, she's like, I can't believe you're using me as a pawn. I trusted you. And she's like, continue to trust me and just go with this. And she slips something into Priscilla's pocket. But then Priscilla's literally just not getting it. And she headbutts Fallon and just screw this, I'm out. And she just flies away and starts running. And Fallon's like, okay, maybe I should have been a bit more upfront. My bad. But anyway, a fight breaks out between Voodoo and Fallon. But Voodoo's like, oh, I'm sorry. You do understand I have been in your head, right? I can literally do things that will make you not attack me. For instance, and she transforms back into the body of the boyfriend from before. I'm blanking on his name, but regardless, Evans, that was it. He shows up and he's like, hey, babe, long time no see. How about you come here, give me a hug? And she's like, that's gross, and tries shooting at her again. But then the story boils down to basically Voodoo trying to convince Fallon that Evans, when Voodoo looked into Evans' head, he saw that he never loved her. He never loved her the entire time. But for that one night where she pretended to be Evans, for that brief moment, Voodoo truly did love Fallon. And the entire time Fallon is hearing this, she's like, that's a load of crap. Shut up. And she's like, all right, fair enough. And then she just stabs Fallon straight through the chest. Just giant, sharp object. Fallon is almost certainly dead. And she's like, all right, yeah, you got me. That night meant nothing. Anyway, I got to go find my original. Meanwhile, the original, during all this, came to the conclusion that Fallon, was playing a con because she found the object that was slipped into her pocket. And so Priscilla comes back and starts attacking Voodoo, but Voodoo's just a bit too fast for her. She's like, you do understand that I've got genetically, above you. I am a hybrid to improve. You can't lay a finger on me. And she's like, maybe not, but I wasn't trying to swipe you. And we see that she planted the bomb, or whatever this device was, on Voodoo's chest, which then goes off and electrocutes her and knocks her out. For just a second, though, because then when Voodoo stands back up, she transforms to the clothing of Priscilla, so now they look absolutely identical. And they're just like, hey, why don't we work together? Because, you have to wonder why the Daemonites chose you to, clone. There has to be a reason there, right? And she's like, I don't care. And she's like, yeah, you do. Come on, let's work together. But then before they can continue that conversation, the Black Razors come in, and Andrew Lincoln's telling them, all right, here's what I need from you guys. I need you to capture the human one and kill the alien one. And the team's like, sir, they are completely identical. What do we do? And he's like, capture them both and then we'll kill the right one later. So they start trying to capture them. One of them freaks out and says, you will never take me alive, Black Razors, and jumps off and runs away. The other one is a lot easier to capture. And she's like, no, please, you gotta let me go. If she escapes again, we're never gonna find her. Come on, son of a bitch. And then Lincoln's like, tough call, but I'm going to say that the one that we managed to capture is probably the human, and the one that ran away is probably Voodoo. So go after Voodoo. And, of course, some Black Razors do, but she transforms into a bird and manages to escape them. And Priscilla hears this over their comms and starts just like punching at them because like, you let them go again? What in the hell is wrong with you? But then Andrew Lincoln himself literally shows up here and he walks up to Priscilla and says like, look, here's the thing. Yeah, you shouldn't trust us. We don't trust us. I don't trust us. But you aren't going to be arrested. You aren't going to be trapped in that cage again. We are offering you a job. Would you like to be a Black Razor? And that's where we leave off. This story had a lot in it. This was a thick one, but it was solid the whole way through. I really felt like. I mean, we've got a major character death in Fallon. She's been around since issue 1, assuming she is actually dead. We don't see the body, but I mean, it was very graphic, the page where she died. So, no, I enjoy this a lot. The art, fantastic the whole way through. My only critique is that, like, they had that part where Andrew, like, tried to make the distinction of which one was the human and which one was the alien. And despite the fact they both resisted, I would go ahead and say the one that said, hiss, you'll never catch me, Black Razors. I'm going to go ahead and chalk that up to being the alien. That seems like the alien thing to do. But beyond that, fine issue overall. I would go ahead and give it a 7.5. I think it is very well done. I have said this over and over again, but Voodoo was always a surprise for me, and I am very happy with how it's turning out throughout this. I believe this is actually the last trade of this book, so we don't have much longer on it, but I am interested to see how they develop it right up until the end. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics on April 25th, 2012. I am happy to see this month over because it finally means that we are pretty much out of Wave 1. Next week marks the beginning of Wave 2 of the New 52. And despite the fact that we're kicking off the culling in that same way, I'm pumped. I'm decently excited for it. In fact, why don't I just tell you all the things that are coming out next week. So May 2nd, 2012 has the number 9 issues of Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Red Lanterns, Green Arrow, Justice League International, Stormwatch, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing. Additionally, we have 4 new number 1s in Earth 2, World's Finest, GI Combat, and Dial H. And as I said earlier, we also have Teen Titans Annual number 1, which is the part 1 of The Culling. Oh boy, how can I be so pumped and yet so upset about a week all at the same time? Alright, anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you very much for tuning in, but hey, do you want to talk to me, like directly, face-to-face, in my home? Go ahead and hit me up on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. That is at DC Comics Podcast. I actually lied about the face-to-face and in my home thing, but you can still talk to me. Additionally, we have a Patreon that is Mild Fuzz TV, MILDFUZZ TV. I just want some money. That's pretty much it. I promise nothing in return, and I'll take your money. That's all. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and listening and rating this 5 stars or thumbs up or sharing it with your mom and saying, hey, look at this guy on the internet. All of those are acceptable ways of sharing and liking the show. But until next time, always try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.